I mean, I couldn't wait. Hey, it's Romania Black. No, I couldn't wait. No. I had time today off and I was like, I want to watch episode 9 because you can't introduce a new character like Roland and then just suddenly leave off and expect me to be okay with that, right? So we're on episode 9 of the case study of Vanitas, and when we last left off, Vanitas and Noe were trying to sneak into a crypt, trying to sneak into the Chaucer's, secret lair, catacombs, and that's when they ran into one of the captains of the Chaucer's, which is Roland. And Roland seems to have some crazy powers he can have access to, and might be a threat to Noe, and looked like he was going to kill him. So, no. I had to go ahead and watch because how could I not, right? How could I not? So I do have a comment that I wanted to address before we started, and that is from Velvety Yuri. Velvety Yuri said that the mangaka for this series is actually a woman, and I was like, oh, how cool. I love it. And I love that they said they like the idea that if Vanitas is a feral rat, that fits very perfectly because Noe is a cat. And I was like, yes. Guy, the motif works for both of them, right? But yeah, I just needed to know more, right? And we've gotten a little bit with the Chaucers. We've learned a little bit about the executioners that Jean is part of, but now we don't really know as much about the Chaucers. So I'm curious what their whole deal is, how that works, how Roland fits into all of that. I'm so intrigued, but I know the lighting and everything is kind of crazy, but it's the middle of the day, and I was like, it's too hot outside to go do anything, and I was like, I instead am just going to watch the next episode of Vanitas, and maybe the cliffhanger will be appeased in this episode, or maybe it'll go into a 3-parter. Who knows, right? We're in the final act of Core 1, right? We've transitioned episode 8, the rule of 8. We've done arc 1, arc 2, and now we're into the final act, because if we're looking at 2 12-episode cores, we're into the final act now. So I have a feeling that maybe whatever happens with Roland will continue on. I think it'll continue on to the rest of the series. I don't think you can introduce someone as eccentric and kind of big personality as Roland and then just think he's going to be a side character. But who knows? Veronica's kind of a wild personality too, and she kind of took a back seat after a couple episodes. So who knows, right? But if it's case study of Vanitas, so anything can happen. Last episode, there was just a ton of info that was just taken and dumped into our lap. And I'm like, oh. So now it's like, what do we do with this? So we'll see, right? But we're not going to waste any more time. I hope y'all are ready because I most certainly am as well. We're going to start episode 9 of the case study of Vanitas. Let me get this microphone off here. I don't think we want that. And we are going to start this episode, see what we get. And we're going to do that here in 3, 2, 1. And let's do it to it, Lars. Well, wasn't that a fun episode? So one thing I really like about this series, and what I like about it, is that it's not only got a lot of things to talk about in each episode, especially for being like a shonen, because it's kind of what it feels like. It feels like a shonen I would have watched in the early 2000s, except it's got more romantic, sensual elements to it, which I like knowing that the mangaka is a woman now, because I feel that makes much sense. And it's not to say anything about guy mangakas at all, but in the genre itself, I feel like kind of similar to Full Metal Alchemist, who is also written by a female mangaka, and the genre itself is shonen, right? I'm assuming this is a shonen. Seems like a shonen. If it's a shoujo, that'd be awesome, but it seems like a shonen. But what I like about it is that when female mangaka kind of do genres that are meant for a more male audience, and I use quotation marks because I'm obviously not the target audience by that parameter, but here we are. What I like about it is that they kind of like take certain tropes and things and weave them in different ways. Like Full Metal Alchemist takes the trope of being like a shonen adventure series and does different things than what I think other shonen had done in the past. And with this, the addition of like the vampire sensual elements of it is really good. But what I love about this series the most is that when it gives you something, it oftentimes will either give you a mystery and something to mull over for a while. Like we've had lots of things to mull over, like with Vanitas and the Blue Moon Vampire. But like in this case, it gave you the setup of maybe Vanitas is one of the former Chaucers. Maybe he's been experimented on. And then we answer the question in the same episode. I was like, good, I don't have to sit there and think about that over and over again. But with that comes a lot of other questions. So what I like about this series is there's just lots to talk about, right? So we need to kind of go look at Vanitas a little bit, because Vanitas, and choose my blue marker here, Vanitas has a very interesting dynamic here. He clearly does not hold much faith in the system, or in anything, rather. And then so I'm gonna put Vanitas here. I'm gonna put Roland in green here, because Roland's character is really interesting. He reminds me of a character from Attack on Titan who's kind of similar. Hard to read, but kind of has this like eccentricity to him that you're just like, what the fudge? And then we have Noe. Noe, who's quite different than any other vampires, right? So we have three characters here who are not quite what they seem, or at least not on the surface, right? But I was really surprised when Roland figures out that Vanitas is Vanitas. His reaction is not exactly what I expected at first. I thought he would just be like, "Oh, I have to destroy you now." But no, he thinks Roland is under the impression that Vanitas, or was anyway, Vanitas is being used by the vampires. Now, Noe and Vanitas have different responses to that. Of course, Noe is like, we are not using Vanitas, but we kind of are. I like that Noe's impression so far has been, to me anyway, that he's like, well, no, we're not using Vanitas. He's the one in control of this situation. He says he's going to do things his way, and he's going to save the vampires on his terms, and we don't really have anything to do about it. But in the same vein, Noe has also kind of acknowledged that he's like, yeah, I'm staying around and helping you because I am kind of using you to figure more out about you and about the Book of Vanitas, because that's what my teacher told me to do. So there is kind of a relationship there that is not really using Vanitas, because Vanitas is in control of the situation, but it is kind of being there to take advantage if needed, right? Whereas Vanitas is very much, seems to be obsessed with the idea of controlling his fate. That goes back to the whole thing with Jean in episode 7, the idea that he's like, I want to, or the love episode, I don't know if it was 6 or 7 now, where he was like, I want to be in love with someone that I know is probably going to leave me, or that I can leave on whatever terms I want to, and don't have to worry about them like straggling past and following me like a puppy. Kind of like what Noe is doing a little bit, and Vanitas is getting frustrated with it, right? But no, Vanitas wants to be upset. He is obsessed with controlling his own fate. He wants to be in control of what happens to him, what actions he takes, and now it's making more sense, right? Because we don't know the circumstance. We don't know the circumstance of the Blue Moon vampire and how they're related to all of this, but assuming the Blue Moon vampire gave their power to Vanitas, there is an implied suggestion that maybe Vanitas was taken advantage of, and Vanitas didn't have much control in that situation, and so that's been a point of grievance for them. We don't know the whole story. That's just something we're kind of led to believe, but we do know from now that he was number 69, and I was like, mangaka, you picked that number. You picked that number out of all the numbers for him. Okay, I see you. But he was an experiment by an ex-chasseur, Moreau, right? And I'm trying to think, Moreau, wasn't Dr. Moreau, isn't that Jekyll and Hyde? Is that right? Is that something to do with that? It's not Sherlock. I'm trying to think, Dr. Moreau. It's not, oh my God, it's not, let me see. I know that name. That name is from a classic story. Moreau, scientist. The Island of Dr. Moreau. Yes. Okay. It's an H.G. Wells novel. I was like, I know there's a famous character called Moreau, and it's, yeah, The Island of Dr. Moreau is a 1986 sci-fi novel by H.G. Wells. Yes. Okay, that's what it is. I'm not going to read any further because I don't want to accidentally spoil what could possibly happen in the next couple episodes. But yeah, I was like, I know the name Moreau, but yeah, it was an H.G. Wells novel. That's what it is. Cool. Yay. But yeah, I like that reference. But I like the idea that Vanitas tells Noe, he's like, get out of here. Don't engage Roland. He will probably kill you. He's got something under that blanket. And he's like, you're in no shape to worry about me. You didn't heed my warning, you fool. And I love that Noe says, every time you open your mouth, it's impossible to listen to you because you're so contradictory and ridiculous. So yes, so Vanitas, he does not want to involve Noe or to get him hurt. So it clearly a lot of his actions make sense if he's trying to push Noe away to where Noe doesn't follow him. He's like, hey, let me be in charge of this. Let me control my own fate. And that's kind of that thing with control as well. Vanitas is like, I can control what happens to me. I can't control what happens to you. And we don't know Vanitas' past at all, but we can infer that he probably doesn't want anything to happen to Noe because then that's going to be a guilty thing on his conscience. And he doesn't want that. So no, it makes total sense. I'm like, yes, nope, all makes all the sense. All of the sense is being made in this episode. But that's when he reveals that he's Vanitas, and Roland's just like, black hair and blue eyes. So we don't know if the black hair and blue eyes, if the blue-eyed vampire, if the vampire of the blue moon had blue eyes and black hair, and thus Vanitas does as well. Did Vanitas originally have black hair and blue eyes? That's the question, right? I kind of had the assumption that maybe Vanitas' eyes were not always blue, and that they became blue when he gained the power, kind of like the vampire's eyes turn red. I guess that kind of back in episode 1, but I don't know if that's the case yet. I like that Roland's eyes are so green. It's a nice little contrast. And then Dami's are yellow, so we have the primary colors. Now we have secondary colors. Fun times. But you think we'd meet so soon. And he's like this poor boy who was forced to dwell among the vampires of the Blue Moon clan. That struck a nerve because Vanitas was like, nope, we're not talking about my past in front of Noe, especially not from somebody that probably doesn't know what's going on. So was he forced to be with the Blue Moon vampires? We don't know about that. But that's what Roland says, and Roland, he pities Vanitas for his fate. And Vanitas, if there's one thing Vanitas hates, it's being pitied. He doesn't like to be pitied. He thinks that they're being self-righteous, and he's like, oh, hell to the no. And I love this point where he says, what a pitiful creature. And Vanitas is like hand twitching. Like you don't say that to Vanitas. I'm saying you people will never change. You cast pity where it's unwanted, and you don't realize that you look down on others. So yeah, so basically Vanitas is like, he hates the self-righteous. He's like, he hates the self-righteous. You cast pity where it's unwanted. He's like, I don't want your pity. I don't want your sadness. Leave me alone. You don't need to do that. I choose my own path no matter what I do. He says, I consort with the vampires. I snuck into your lair. I raked your face. Those were all things that were my free will. So yes, that is kind of a big impetus behind Vanitas, is that level of control he's trying to maintain by saying, like, I'm choosing to save the vampires, which again, they all said that originally Vanitas did not want to save the vampires and wanted to destroy them. So it's like Vanitas is acting against every status quo that's set in front of him, because that only to him proves his control of the situation. He's like, Vanitas wants me to destroy vampires, I'm gonna save them. You want me to be friends with you, I'm scratching your face. Noe wants me to follow and be his companion, I'm gonna turn him away. Like, everything he does is to keep his own level of control of the situation, because he doesn't seem to want to do anything otherwise. And Roland's such a weird, like, he's got the trolling like enthusiasm of Vanitas, but then he has like the innocent naivete of Noe, although he's not quite as naive as Noe, but he's very, very like just this like, oh yes, of course, why, of course we would, you poor pitiful creature. All right, so we'll go back to this where he just takes pity on him, and he's just like, open your eyes, dear Vanitas. And he's just not dissuaded at all. He's like got all this boundless enthusiasm, and Vanitas is like, what the fudge? Like, why didn't you listen? What's going on? And he's like, look at me. It's all right. There's nothing to fear. And Vanitas is like, I absolutely hate you. Though you've gone astray, the Lord will never abandon you. And Vanitas is like, well, I don't care about that. Like, Vanitas seems to be, like, very agnostic, like, very not having anything to do with religion, anything with anybody. He only wants to trust himself and be in control of his own life. Meanwhile, it's given Noé just enough time to gain his vision back. Now, Durandal, the like drill sword that also undoes into a chain weapon. I love that weapon. It's so freaking cool. I love when it like comes apart into like dual blades and the blades like come apart and be like a whip. What I was going to say it reminded me of all things to remind me of, is that there's a series called Toilet Bound Hanako-kun. And in that, there's a character called Mitsuba. And Mitsuba has like, part of their motif is like a fish bone. It looks like a fish skeleton. But the fish bone tail becomes like a weapon they can control. And it looks very similar to Durandal. So I thought that was really cool. I liked that reference. It was so neat. But yeah, the weapon is really awesome. I watched Bleach back in the day. I've watched Bleach and kind of like the Battle Shonen where they have weapons and the weapons are named and all of that. So I grew up on shows like that. But I do really like the fight choreography. And I also like that Noé talks about manipulating, again, we get into like the sci-fi aspects of it, manipulating the formulas to walk on walls and the ceilings. See, I like that the vampires are given like a scientific explanation. I mean, it's pure hokum, right? But I like that the idea is that he's like, I can manipulate the threads of the formula of this world to where I can walk on walls and do crazy things. Like, I think that's pretty cool. I like that. I like it a lot. I think it's a neat explanation, and it makes the fight choreography look really, really nice. I like it. And then I like that Roland says, I've never seen a vampire move so swiftly after being struck by that light. And Noé is like, well, Noé is not your typical vampire. And plus, the whole thing about the astromite being like the powered by the blue moon, the fact that Noé isn't affected as much by it, I think is something. I think there is something there. That he's not as affected by the astromite that has been created with the Blue Moon Vampire Clan and all of that. So we think. Yeah, I feel like there's something to it, especially his clan being special and him being special. I think there is something to that, right? There's a reason why that is the case. And I like that Noé has really nothing against the Chaucers at this point. He's just like, oh man, big city vampires never listen and neither do humans. I'm like, you country bumpkin, what a ham. And then Vanitas is like, meanwhile, trying to get out of there, and that's when he uses the candelabra to get out. There's some really good shots of Roland fighting in this. And the fact that he uses the button to activate the astromite, and that does affect him, but Vanitas comes in to save him. I like that he just like licks the blood off his face, and then Maria and George come in there and they're like, are you all right? And he's like, let's go find them. And he's like, come out, dear Vanitas. And they're like, he's not going to come out with you yelling. And he's like, oh yes, he will. Like he thinks that Vanitas wants to get away from the vampires, which in some cases, yes, that's true. So then we have this confrontation, this dialogue between Vanitas and Noé. And I love that Vanitas is creeped out by Roland, who's like basically another cinnamon bun. I love it. He's like, that Roland fellow. He's like, did you see it? His eyes brimming with goodwill. What I like about Vanitas is that he is not trying at any point to say that he's a good guy. Vanitas, as we've seen, has done a few questionable things that you're like, a good guy would probably not do that, but there you are. And he's just acknowledging, he's like, oh, did you see what a cinnamon bun? Vanitas does not like sweet things, as we found out in episode 7. He does not like sweetness. So he's like, he's too sweet. He's like the piece of tarte tatin. Where meanwhile, Noé's like, I want to be best friends with him. He's like, I'm all about the sweet. He's like, I want that. The sanctimonious fools won't accept malice for what it is. Those are the worst. So what he's saying is he basically is self-righteous and tried to spin violence from what it is. He's like the ones that try to like say that what they're doing is in the name of like this religion or whatever, and not acknowledging that what they're doing is hurting people. So that kind of is what gets his ties in a twist the most. Meanwhile, Noé's like, well, I would really like to be friends with him, and just kind of laughs it off. He's like, I never thought you'd meet your match. Yeah, Roland, if anybody can meet the match of Vanitas, it's Roland. Roland doesn't seem affected at all. Noé cares enough about Vanitas for realsies to where Vanitas gets on his nerves, and we'll talk about that in this episode. Roland doesn't necessarily like harbor any romantic or attachments towards Vanitas. He's just like a cinnamon bun that's like, I'll save you, and Vanitas is like, I don't need you to save me. So I actually kind of love it. And then he gains his eyesight back, and they talk about that. And so meanwhile, the Moreau guy is like watching them where they are. And Noé's like, if we work together, we can win this. And then Noé's like, let's do this. And so then they talk about Moreau. And on the other side of it, we see number 128. They're not ordinary chasseurs that are abducting the vampires. They're enhanced humans, the fruit of Moreau's human experiments. And there's been at least 128 of them, and Vanitas was number 69. So now, this is kind of clever on the author's part, because not only do we get a little bit into Vanitas's past, but if you'll notice, Moreau called him number 69. We don't get to know his real name, because he's just called number 69, and it's like, the mangaka refuses to tell us such things. And then we see Moreau saying, Vampire of the Blue Moon. He was robbed. The vampire robbed him from me. So, the timeline that we get is, we still have a big old question mark about where Vanitas was. We know that his parents died. His parents died by a vampire. And the chasseurs saved him. Which he's probably, there's probably some resentment there, because Vanitas was saved by the chasseurs after his parents were killed, and so he probably didn't like vampires and thought the chasseurs were a savior. But then, in a banana fishian twist, it turns out that one of those saviors, Moreau selects him for an experiment. For experimentation. Because he says what? He's like, because he said that was my precious test subject. And there's a moment here where we see Vanitas, and his eyes aren't blue. It's shadowed, and his eyes look almost black, which made me think in the moment, I'm like, were his eyes originally like black and dark, and then when he was, bitten by the Blue Moon vampire, is that what made him blue? We don't know, but maybe we might find out if the story goes on. And so he tells him to go. And I like that Roland, wants him to be kept alive. And so they go after him. And I like when they show up on the scene before we get the rest of the timeline there. I love that he shows up and, everything's just chaos. There's, the different, automations that they have been corrupted. And there's one just, assaulting a guy. I'm like, what the hell? This spider one is terrifying. But he basically, he changed the Astromite in order to, work and do what they wanted. Now, again, we talk about colors in this. We've had, blues and greens. I love that the latter part of this episode takes place where everything's purple. It's like the blue moon vampire, the red all combining. Purple is Noé's color, so it all, the purple lighting looks beautiful. And so that's when, I like the idea that we at one point have the wall in between them, and there's the cutout of the wall where you can see Vanitas and Noé. You see the cutouts around them. That's really, really good. He's like, I hope we reach our goal without crossing paths with the chasseurs, that we just find Moreau without crossing paths. And Noé's like, I have so many questions. How did you know this place so well that you can bedevil the chasseurs? What is that man Moreau trying to achieve? What is your connection to him? And why is it that at times you make that face? And of course, Noé hates to see. The thing about it is Noé, he hates to see Vanitas sad and defeated. He hates to see him defeated. He commented about that on top of the bell tower, where he's like, sometimes it feels like you've given up on things. And he's like, and I hate that, because Noe loves life. Noe is the vampire that loves all things, and he celebrates life. And so, of course, he hates to see Vanitas sad, and Vanitas gets aggravated by it. And he's like, quit making that face. Vanitas is like, quit looking at me with this. And Vanitas, in turn, hates pity. So it's like Noe feels bad for him and doesn't like him feeling, sad. And Vanitas doesn't like people feeling pity on him. It's a bad combo. I love that Noe's like, I always look like this. He's like, I always have this face. And Vanitas is like, no, you don't. Don't lie to me. You're feeling pity on me. And of course, at this point, you have the wall cut out where we can see Vanitas and we can see Noe. Noe is fully shown, like, being genuine. Vanitas has, like, the pipe in between where you can't fully see everything about him. But there's a wall in between them. Like, it's a literally and symbolically. And that's when he says, my parents were slain by a vampire. And the Chaucers saved me from the same fate. And he tells Noe, the church began training me to join as a new recruit. So there is a little bit of a thing here. So his parents were killed by a vampire. The Chaucers saved him. The church started training as a recruit, which probably the fact that they let Moreau do what he did probably completely disillusioned Vanitas from any nice feelings he would have had about the church. And then Moreau, see what he says about Moreau at that point. He says, they trained me as a new recruit, but before I was ready, Moreau took notice of me and I became his guinea pig. So Moreau took him as a guinea pig, which of course is absolutely terrifying, right? End of story. And Noe is like, end of story? He's like, there's clearly more to the story than this. Like, yeah. So basically, there is a period of time where he doesn't want to talk about that. He doesn't want to talk about how he was experimented on, what they did to enhance him, like how did that work. But we do know that the Blue Moon vampire took him away. And then there's another period of time that we don't talk about, and then we're at the present. So yeah, so we're getting more of a timeline with Vanitas, right? We're getting more of a timeline here, that's the stuff that's happened to him. But I like that Noe's like, excuse me, what do you mean end of story? And he's like, oh, and I spent years down here, so I know it well. So yeah, so he spent years with Moreau and them, so he knows that's how he was able to navigate it. It's as simple as that. That's not what I meant, Noe said. I love that. I love that look where Noe has the hand in front of his face, and he said, why did he tell the story as if it were someone else? Like, why did he tell the story as if it wasn't him? So Noe has kind of detected but cannot define the trauma that Vanitas has experienced. Clearly there's some trauma there. A lot. Probably. And Noe is just trying to figure out, he's like, I need you to talk to me. Like, I need you to tell me these things. And then Vanitas is like, it doesn't want to talk about it. You don't hold a grudge against vampires. And that's when Vanitas says, the way I see it, humans and vampires are the same. They're both truly monstrous and endlessly selfish creatures. So yeah, to Vanitas, he's like, vampires, humans, doesn't make a difference. They're both selfish. They both have used me. They both have abused me. And I don't harbor goodwill towards any of them. Like, Vanitas just doesn't feel like anybody has given him a fair shake at all or treated him kindly at all. And it's one of those things where, you kind of like get this lack of trust from that situation, right? That Vanitas being in this situation, of course he would have trust issues because the very people that saved him, he has trust issues from the vampires because they killed his parents. Then he has trust issues from the church and the Chaucers because they took him in and trained him, but then let Moreau, one of their own, experiment on him. So there's trust issues there, and they're humans. So to Vanitas, he's like, I can't trust anybody. They'll all betray me and leave me no matter what. and I have to just be in control of myself. And I think that the concept of Noe and Noe's kindness freaks Vanitas out, because he's like, there's no way anybody can be sincere like this. There's no way that someone like me can deserve love from someone like you. There's no way you can be possible. That doesn't make sense. Like Vanitas, we're learning more about his character and like all the issues he has, like trust and commitment, and just how little self-worth he has. And so for him, it's hard to imagine anyone looking at him and thinking that he's, you know, worthy of love. He's like, I'm just a guinea pig. I'm just an experiment. I'm not a human. I'm not a vampire. I'm just this freak. And I can only do what I can to control my fate. And I can't trust or rely upon anybody else. And Noe's over here like, that's dumb. You know? Noe's like, I don't agree with any of that. So it's so sad. And Noe's just like has his head cocked, being like, and gets mad and says, you don't make that face. He's like, I'm tired of seeing you in pain. He's like, keep your voice down. He's like, seeing you make that face raise my hackles. And again, just like Noe says, well, I've always had this face. Vanitas is like, well, I was born with this face too. So it's like just make out and get out of here already. Like, go on. And that's when Roland and them show up. And I do love that Vanitas gets that smirk on his face when he throws the light grenade and like leaves Roland. It's great. And of course, Roland just like opens manually the door to get through. It's absolutely ridiculous. I really like Roland's character. He's a goofball, but I do like him quite a bit. And then, and Vanitas looks like he's out of breath and kind of like struggling. I was surprised Noe didn't say anything about it, because Vanitas looks like he was like getting low on energy. He's just kind of like crawling his way through the entrance. He's like, we need to make our way towards Moreau and his enhanced humans. But Noe's like, to what end? He's like, the abducted vampires should be there too if they still are alive. So that leads us to believe that it's possible that the humans are being enhanced by vampires. Okay. Has kind of a Seraph of the End vibe with that to that extent. And then I like that Noe, bless his heart, Noe is such a gentleman. He's like, you hit that girl Maria. And Vanitas is like, yes, we need a hostage. And he's like, that's not nice to hit a lady. I'm like, I don't know how Noe plans to fight Nania, the vampire, because she's a woman and she seems terrifying. So I'm like, how do you expect to fight her if you're against this whole don't hurt a lady thing? And Vanitas is like, not this again, not your chivalry. But Noe's whole thing is it's not necessarily the chivalry though for Noe. He is all about having a peaceful resolution. Noe is like, if we can talk with them, maybe we can get them to work with us. And Vanitas is like, how can you think like that? There is no peaceful resolution. So Vanitas is saying that there is no such thing as negotiation possible. But he is proven wrong, as Roland is okay with it. I think he's okay with it as long as it meets their agenda. Because, yeah, I think the fact that Moreau is in their own headquarters and Moreau is within their own walls, that all the people are like, oh, wait, what? Like, I didn't realize that Moreau was there without Roland and them knowing. I thought they knew at the start of this episode. But no. So, I think the only reason they really go along with Noe is because, one, I mean, Noe, the smolder. I'd be in love too. But I think that it's not only that, but it's the fact that they were like, oh, this guy's in our walls. He's not supposed to be here. Yeah, we need to find out what the heck's going on with him. So it's advantageous for the Chaucers to find Moreau and get him out of there, just like it's advantageous for Vanitas to ask whatever questions that he has. And so, yeah, it manages to work out. But Noe's like, well, we should be able to just talk this out. Like, we didn't come here to start a fight anyway. It just ended up somehow happening. And Vanitas is like, there is no peaceful resolution. He's like, why do you keep talking about this? And he's like, well, if we explain the situation, we could clear up the misunderstanding. And Vanitas saying, this is what makes you people weak. You people. He didn't say vampires. He said you people. So that leads to the question, too, of was Vanitas like Noe? And then he became jaded when things didn't work out. Because that's what it seems. It seems like Vanitas once had this mentality kind of like Noe, and then it just went to hell in a handbasket, and it just kind of completely disillusioned him from thinking anything like that could even be possible. And he says, you have great power, but you dig your own graves by shackling yourselves. He's like, you have all this power, you could do anything, but instead you're trying to just talk it out when you could just overthrow the person and get it over with. Which is not Noe's style at all, right? But I feel like Vanitas, at some point, someone has told him he had to be strong to survive. And that's kind of been the mentality he's been carrying this whole time. So when somebody like Noe comes along that's quite privileged and doesn't have to show off that power, it bothers Vanitas a lot, right? And then that insult that he said to him, he's like, Vanitas, he's like, I'm done with you. He said, if you don't like my way of doing things, you're free to go it alone. Like he wants to push Noe away and just push him away so he can do it on his own so he doesn't get hurt. Because he's like, he thinks that Noe is a bit naive. And he's like, if you think that you can solve everything through peaceful negotiation, it's going to get you killed. Because somebody else is going to say no and hurt you. And he doesn't want that to happen. And that insult that he says, he's like, working with naives, fool like you will be the death of me someday. Foreshadowing! Noe has told us that he dies by his hand, so maybe. He says, go make nice with your preachy pals, you candy-brained, blood-sucking brat. He's like, you're too sweet. Get out of here. Go make nice with the preacher. And that is exactly what Noe does. I love that Noe gets mad at him, and he's like, fine. I'm going to take a hostage, but it's going to be you because you're the one that they want. I love it. I love that Vanitas is like, wait, what are we doing? What's happening? What's going on? And I love that he's like, and those are some scary eyes. He's like, we can win if we work together. Noe's like, we're going to do it my way, whether you like it or not. I love their dynamic. I love that Noe is not discouraged. He's like, Vanitas, you're driving me crazy, but I'm not giving up on you. I'm going to help you some way or another, whether you like it or not. I'm going to be a help to you, whether you want it or not. And Vanitas is like, I just want you to leave me alone. Again, our feral rat king. He's just like, let me alone to my garbage. And then that's when, like, he knocks out that kick in the air, that leg, that big old leg coming down and getting Roland. So good. And then he knocks him down, and I love that he just grabs him. I love that he grabs him, and you think he's gonna, like, rip his arms off, but he's like, pleased to meet you. Roland's like, what the fudge? I love that Vanitas is, like, stuck in between them, being like, I'm in this smolder sandwich I didn't ask to be. It's great. But Roland, who is also a sweet cinnamon bun, is like, what's wrong with you? And that's when they bring up Dr. Moreau. And that's why they listen to him. And I like that while the Chaucers are getting things, like settling things and realizing the Moreau story and if they can believe them or not, in the background, Vanitas and Noe are fighting. He's like, why you? He's like, I could have been killed if things went south. And he's like, what did you, and what you just did? Were you trying to kill me? And he's like, I held back to make sure you didn't break anything. And he's like, that's not the issue. I love that Roland's like, wow, you guys are like a married couple, so are you really a vampire? He just like interrupts them just so casually, like, I hate to interrupt your lover's quarrel, but are you a vampire? What's happening? Like, I love it. The little beady green eyes are kind of creepy, but I'll take it. I like Roland's character a lot. It's fun. The Chaucers only hunt the violent vampires who rampage the human world. So again, that's showing that their view of humanity, the Chaucers' view of vampires, is a very limited scope. They're not used to seeing vampires like Noe, who are pretty normal cinnamon buns, right? And he's like, Noe, let us be friends. I want to learn everything about you. And I love that both the Chaucers and Vanitas are like, what? I have a feeling that Roland, the face that Vanitas makes between Roland and Noe, like doing the bro, they have the bro thing, the hand bro thing come together, like when their fists, they're like flexing and like shaking hands, and Vanitas is like, what's just happened? I feel like Roland being with Noe is going to make Vanitas' life a living hell. And I'm excited to see it. I'm excited to see it. But yes, they managed to go. He's like, why didn't you tell us in the first place? And they're both like, and then yes, Vanitas is making that face again as they go down to see Moreau's lair. And then when they come in, it's all ribbons and congrats and confetti. I like that Roland's face is like, this is weird. And Noé's like, this is weird. Vanitas does not look surprised by any of this. I feel like I'm getting like the mad scientist from Full Metal Alchemist vibes. I'm getting early like Teach vibes from this. I'm like, oh no, is this gonna be an Edward? Is this gonna be one of those episodes coming up? Seems like it might be. I don't know how to feel, but yeah, because Vanitas is very like, his expression is very dark there, like, oh, just, he says welcome, or should I say welcome home, and then he says my number's 69. And then, of course, he's like, do you remember me? You remember me, don't you? It's Dr. Moreau. And then, of course, Noé's like, Vanitas. And Vanitas' reaction when he steps forward is all like, oh, Mr. Moreau. But it looks all like sparkly and good, but he's not smiling. He's just like, Mr. Moreau. Like, there is no smile on his face. It looks very forced. So, is Vanitas going to try to kill Dr. Moreau? I feel like they're there to get information first. So he's gonna play it up. He's gonna appeal to Dr. Moreau at first and be like, oh yes, it is number 69. Ha ha ha. Tell me what you know. And the moment he tells him what he knows, he's gonna be like, okay, bye. But we'll see if that ends up happening. I like the idea. I'm really glad that Roland is not going to be... I'm glad that Roland ended up listening to Noé, because that is a trope that sometimes gets annoying in shonen when it's like, if you just help us, that'd be great. And they're like, never! And we're going to battle to the death. And you're like, this would be so much easier if you just helped. And this is like a nice subversion where Roland's like, okay, it's going to benefit us all, so sure, why not? I am glad for that. I'm glad that that ended up happening in this. That was a good thing. So yeah, I'm very excited to hear your thoughts down below. This episode was great. Learning a lot about Vanitas. Filling in some gaps, but still have a long way to go. So in the meantime, I hope you all have a wonderful week. Please stay safe, take care, and yes, I'll be back very soon with more of the case study of Vanitas. Bye!